Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for being here. I'd like to ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on Monday, July 13th at 5:00 p.m. regarding the administrator's budget presentation. Roll call. Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Here. Markley. Here. Walters. Here. Philbrook.
Here.
Holland.
Here. I'm going to go ahead. We usually don't schedule someone to offer a prayer, but if we're ever going to pray, it should be before the budget proceedings. So I'd invite you to stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good and gracious God, we thank you so much for gathering all of us here today, and remind us always that as we make decisions, financial decisions, budget decisions for our community, that we're making decisions about the people who live here and the best way to help move our community forward. We ask for your guidance in the next several weeks ahead, and we ask that you will lead us to make the best decisions for this community that are possible. We ask all of this in your holy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are here for the 2016 budget presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Administrator Doug Bach.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and present to you my amended 2015 and proposed 2016 budget. It's taken a great effort to get to this point, but I will say some of the best efforts that put forth into this was from the Commission. The whole move to go through strategic planning and do our budget process year-round maybe gets a little painful from that perspective, but it certainly allows us to be much more strategic in the way we go about working on this and putting together, starting initiatives, planning them through, and then also giving the public more time to weigh in months in advance and us to evaluate their proposals before we get to this point. I also want to say, as we start into this, a special thank you to my budget staff. I'll start with Chief Financial Officer Lou Levin, Reginald Lindsay, and Debbie Johncher is the Deputy Finance Director, and also the budget staff. So if you would all rise, I'd like to give you a round of applause. Thank you very much. They put a lot of hard hours in. Thank you. I'm going to start out this year talking about the highlights that I've built into this budget. Then we'll get into the details of what's in the budget from a numbers perspective, and then I'll go back into the highlights and present a little bit more detail within each one. So this year's budget is a no change to the mill rate. It builds our fund balance, which has been a directive of this commission to add money to it, repay some of the special funds which we deferred money from over the past several years or we've borrowed from in order to balance the end, enhances our parks and recreation programs. It also puts money toward our public safety task force recommendations, addresses employee compensation, which has only seen a 2% increase over the last 5 years. We see capital investment. There's a new urban redevelopment plan. We address animal control, which has been a hot topic this year, as well as new initiatives toward open data and innovation. So before we get into this, we'll break this out, but I want to start with a little bit of revenue trends that we're seeing in our community. We're up about 4.5% in the city and county from a valuation perspective. This results in about $1.1 million for the city and $1.5 million for the county budget. Our sales tax is up about $600,000. And through a special economic development initiative, we are seeing a one-time land payment of $9.5 million in our 2015 budget. Casino hotel, while we were disappointed not to see the hotel move forward this year or last year, within our development agreement, we had a penalty in place that penalizes them $1.4 million, or it's about 1% of their gross operating revenues, and we will continue to see that receive this penalty until such time that they move forward with construction. Our forecasts regarding our utility pilots are down a little bit. This is really a result of us forecasting a little higher than projected when we looked at our 2015 and then our 2016 budgets. And then the mortgage registration tax is down due to the legislative action from last year. And this is one of those gifts that'll kind of keep on giving each year until it eventually all goes away. So we lost about $500,000 last year, or this year, another $400 next year, and then it'll just be a compounding number until it essentially is gone. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Reginald Lindsay, our budget director, and let him walk through where our numbers are for this coming year. But as I present this, one of the keys I want to point out to you is you're going to see a significant number change in the overall dollars and cents. Last year our budget was built in, or this year was at about $295 million. This year's budget comes in at a little over $323 million. These are largely a result of two accounting measures versus operation change that we have put forth in our budget. One we've talked more about, and that's the STAR bonds and how they're reflected. We have to show those from an accounting perspective, and that's a $6 million increase to reflect in our budget, because in the event those bonds didn't pay, we're supposed to be able to show that we can make those payments. The reality, and always has been the reality with the STAR bonds, all the revenue, there's been plenty of revenue with those accounts to fund them each year. And in fact, as we all know in our community, we're well ahead of schedule. They're not due to be paid off until 2021, and they should be paid off by the end of next year. But from an accounting perspective, we show that $6 million additional over what we had not previously shown. So that's really revenues and expenses that are both detailed in our budget. Additionally, I've built a special asset fund in this year's budget, and that's in direct relation to one of the initiatives put forth this year to sell both the Hilton Garden Inn and the Legends Theater. So we account for numbers in our budget that will take the revenue in from those sales, and then if we have to do anything to expense it out. It really has no impact on our bottom line unless you all elect to do something with it. If we are fortunate enough to see a couple $1 million of revenues, we can move that over and expend it in the general fund. But at this point, it's really an accounting measure that adds $18 million for those two to account for potential revenue and an expense. But they're not in the general fund areas, but they are showing in the whole budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lindsay and let him walk through from this point.
Thank you, Doug. Our 2016 proposed budget is total $323 million. It funds 30 state certified funds and also over 200 services for the community. The sources of revenue, as illustrated on the screen, mostly come from property tax, with sales tax, franchise tax, and charges for services coming in a close third. On the expenditure side of our $323 million budget, public safety is our largest category that we fund at 39%. Next is public works, and then community services. In this expenditure budget, we funded $7 million more in capital than we did in 2015. Here with the City General Fund, we have our sources of support on one side that shows our balanced budget, and then our expenditures on the next side that shows our expenditures going out. Our sources of support are property tax, sales tax, and franchise tax. Sales tax is becoming a larger part of our budget. It has grown over 10% in the last 3 years, and it's making property tax a lesser piece of the pie. On the expenditure side, we can see personnel is almost 70% of our budget, and also in this budget, we funded $1.5 million more in capital than we did in 2015. Here we have our county general budget, which is $54 million, and our largest source of revenue is our property tax, coming in at $32 million. And over on our expenditure side, our largest expenditure category is personnel, and then services, which is $13 million. Of this $13 million, $6 million goes out for inmate housing and inmate medical on the county side. Also, in this expenditure budget for the county general fund, we funded $500,000 more in capital than we did in 2015. This slide right here illustrates all the other state certified funds that make up our $323 million budget. And there's a total of 28 funds here, largest funds being the sewer system, coming in at $36 million, and then also EMS, and then also our bond fund. The dollar bill illustrates how much of your dollar goes to taxes within the unified government if you stay in the USD 500. And you can see there at the bottom of the dollar bill, there are 6 taxing entities. 2 of those, the city of Kansas City and Wyandotte County. And you can see the unified government makes up 49% of your tax dollar, while all the other entities make up 51%. I'll turn it back over to Doug now.
Thank you, Reginald. Now I'll go into the highlights related points, and this is the first one to note where we're going to keep the mill rate constant. This just notes that at 82 mills. This is where we moved to several years ago, and we've stayed at that level. Enhancement of parks and recreation funding. Back 2007, 2008, when we started to cut our budget, we cut many of the non-public safety, if not all the non-public safety departments, 15 to 20%. Our Parks Department received even greater cuts, probably cutting it closer to 40% overall from an operational perspective. This budget starts to take a movement back toward putting more money into our parks and recreational programming. As we do this, one of the keys in bringing on our new parks director this year in discussion with him is we need to take a look at our parks. Let's do a parks master plan that gives us a 5 and 10-year look to say if we're going to invest more money into them, where should it be, and let's do it from a strategic standpoint. So it puts money forth to do this Parks Master Plan next year. And then a highlight within this is a movement toward an accessible playground. Now this is planning money for that design. So once we determine where would be the right place for this to go, we then could do the design work for this to come forward. It's also hopeful that we could find considerable grants to go along with such a program as this. Last year, the Commission put forth an initiative to say, hey, if we're going to ask our residents to mow their yards, we need to mow our own. So we put money toward a summer mowing program, which I will say with all the rain, we're still seeing our parks look in a little better condition than they previously were. So we're continuing that program with this and expanding it, putting more money toward this so we can hire a couple more youth or part-time people during the summer months and make sure we have all the proper equipment to go to. We've also added online scheduling and payments for park facilities. This is a module we'll add to our system later in the year. So when people go to enroll to look what facilities they want to use, they don't have to line up coming at the beginning of the year and see which facilities they can use. We can string this out over different times of the year and time our programming is for people to schedule these, and they can do it from the convenience of their home. A couple of new positions, a horticulturalist as well as a maintenance person. This will protect the right-of-ways, the areas we've spent money on in the parks, so we can keep our plants, shrubs, and everything growing in that area, and it also keeps our facilities up to par. We're increasing our marketing programs, and then also in the picture you see one of our new futsal courts. This is one of our economic development projects in relation to Sporting Kansas City, where they're coming in and doing 8 different locations within our community, 4 of them where they were going in and resurfacing and putting in new things within existing parks. They're doing double courts. This is one of them at Wellburn Park. Those 4 are either complete or under construction now, and then we'll have 4 more locations that are still in the design phase because they are going from a starting point, so we're working with the planning department and sporting as to how we go through and put those in play. Over the course of the last year, the mayor has led a task force that has looked into recruitment, hiring, and promotions. Particular emphasis on that is to look forward to what we're doing for bringing in additional minority recruits within the police, fire, and sheriff's department. This task force came forward with several recommendations as to what we could do as a community to improve this. Several of these required some financial measures, and I've built these into our budget. The first 2 really come to the recruitment side of that equation, and that's one is an HR recruitment specialist and a budget to go with it. This recruitment specialist will work across all different areas between the police, fire, and sheriff's department and work with the human resources team, so they're all part of what they can put forth to bring in more people, get out to different venues, and then work with people who would be more specialized within those departments as needed. We're also going to continue our certification of promotional testing, putting money toward that in our budgets. We're restoring the police cadet program, which really was unfunded this year as our cadets went out. We're down to just 1 cadet, so this builds us back up to 6 cadets in the police department during 2016. And then we're establishing a fire trainee program, and its difference from a cadet program is that this program is really designed as we go out and we hire new recruits to come in, and they will have their certification from being a firefighter paramedic, a firefighter EMT. We can also hire someone that's not certified as an EMT yet, but they'll be in a trainee program. And still working on this program design with Chief Jones, but it is intended that this person would have a year to go through and get their EMT certification. And then after that, in our next recruit class, as we're ready to move forward, they'll be able to move right in and be able to advance with that. And with that works the fire recruit age dropping from 21 to 19. So if we hire a 19-year-old within that recruit class, they pass their certifications for EMT, then they would be ready to advance. Employee compensation is also addressed within this budget. We build in money for a 1.5% adjustment in 2015, 1.5% in 16, but also putting forth a commitment that in 2017 we're looking to make a cost of living increase of 2% to our employees. This budget underlines how economic development can make an impact back on our community. Many of us know that already what happens in the Village West area and with the casino project and everything out there, it's generating almost $20 million in property taxes that come back to our community. That property tax dollar is broken up between the taxing entity that Mr. Lindsay's demonstrated before, so the unified government gets about half that money. That is money from those economic development projects that really help sustain us over the downturn in our economy and lost revenue we didn't receive once machinery and equipment went away through state legislative changes. Having that in place has made a big impact across our whole community. This year we focus more toward a one-time land payment that's come in at about $9.5 million from our deal with Cerner and Sporting Kansas City, which is allowing us to repay some of the funds we had to borrow from in previous years and also target money toward new capital in our community. I break out that $9.5 million this way. We were expecting about $3 million through that deal. We're keeping that in the operating line items, where we're using $2 million to go toward restoring our fund balance, $2 million toward repayment or to our health fund, where we deferred some payments previously. We're also putting $500,000 toward workers' compensation fund, the water pollution fund, and our environmental trust fund. And then there's $1 million that's set aside for capital equipment. This is really intended to be a cash payment, where many areas we're doing debt or leasing in capital. This will be cash that'll go toward putting back in some equipment that we previously had underfunded. I broke out a few different areas in capital, which just really puts an emphasis on where we're at. There we go. Sometimes we overlook the fact just how much money we spend in our street and in infrastructure. The 2015 and 16 budgets targets $18 million in this area. And this is toward construction, maintenance. I noted on here that we're spending $700,000 more toward our ADA ramp replacements. That's up from where we were at $200,000, so we're up to $900,000. Significantly making a movement toward our federal agreement that says we're going to spend more money to do ADA ramps across our community. The other area where we're working toward where it'd be a future consent decree with the EPA is we're spending $24 million on storm and wastewater projects. I've also noted through the course of this year, we've been doing a fire study that's looking at operations within the fire department, where we can do things to improve, make that better, but we're also looking at each one of our fire stations and determining our highest priorities as to which fire stations may need to be replaced, or is there the opportunity to consolidate some of those fire stations. So there's $400,000 in the 2016 budget, which allows us, once that's identified with this study, to move forward and design and plan that station out after it's determined what the highest priority is, so we're ready to move forward on that next year. Future years we'll have to have the capital money in line, but this gets us going right away after we get the study completed. I've also listed out several different areas where we're able to make some significant investments in equipment, ones where we have really been light on funding, years where we've come up and hardly bought or didn't buy any police cars. This enables us this year and next year to make a significant impact in those areas, so we're somewhat caught up. I won't say we'll be all the way to where we should be, but it advances us a long ways. I've also noted body cameras up here. This is in relation to a grant that we've applied for. There's a lot of studying we will still do before we'd ever enact that, but it puts money in play. In the event we're able to win successfully a $500,000 grant, we would have matching money here to put this in place. All the capital projects and equipment are detailed out in the budget, which is going online now as we're moving forward with this presentation. Animal control is another area of emphasis. 3 areas that have been addressed. One is hiring a civilian manager. This is significant in the sense that we've had good management out there, but it's been a sworn person who typically looks to move on somewhere else, may get promoted within the police department. They learn some expertise about what they're doing out there, and then we move them on to another area, which is where they're tended in other parts of the police department. This hires a civilian manager who will come in with expertise, knowledge base of how to run facilities like ours, and then stay with it and gain a good knowledge of the community. The Chief Ziegler has moved forward with this initiative since coming forward as a chief at the beginning of the year, and in fact our new animal control manager will start work this Thursday. The budget funds for a new animal control officer in 2016, and also some additional facility renovations and additions. A new initiative I'm excited about is toward urban development. Over the years, we found out that I think we know how to do development in green space, and we have a good formula to do things toward manufacturing and industrial. But when it comes to our urban areas, we often find that we have a gap. So I'm putting this forward as our new Urban Development Gap Fund, appropriately named. As we look at this, how can we put money in something to match other dollars and leverage additional dollars? So if we're working on a project and it's worth a couple $1,000,000, we've set forth and found ourselves to be a few $100,000 short. Now we use the formula to say, how can a project pay for itself? And one of those ways, you look at the sales tax, new sales tax generated, new property tax generated, but it doesn't always get there. And we have this gap. So I'm proposing that we put $3 million out in debt financing that we can go to when we come forward with a good project. We determine that it's there. This will leverage a lot more money into our community, and we can advance some projects that we otherwise would just see go away and help to stimulate things within the core of our community. I've noted key areas that often come up, but I don't want to limit it to just this, but that's land acquisition, demolition, and infrastructure. Those are all things we're always trying to figure out how to solve for, because they're usually a higher number, because something is already existing on the site that we need to take out, or there's infrastructure in the ground that needs to be replaced, or streets above ground that have to be demoed and then fixed. So that's why I target those areas. I'm also proposing a new small business startup fund. This is to put $50,000 in 2016 toward helping to move in where we have a business owner and a tenant, and usually there's a couple $1,000s gap, so we may be able to throw this money into the project to fill a storefront, such like that. It's an initiative brought forward by the Economic Development Department. I think it has a lot of merit, and I think we can make a change with it. Within these areas also, we have put forward strategic money toward demolition and boarding up of houses. There's $110,000 in the upcoming budget, where now we have a lot of projects that are lined up for demolition. We can't get to them. There may be something within an area that we are looking to acquire property, or we do acquire property if they're going through tax sale and such, but as we're going to hold that property until we can do something with it, we need to make sure vagrants don't get into it, it doesn't get tore up, somebody can come in and reinvest, or we just determine that's a house that needs to go away because it'll make a neighborhood that much better right off the bat. We can go in and strategically put this money in for demolition, take it down. It may be 200 down on the list from a need when we look at it just from a demolition perspective, but from a community betterment, it's at the top of the list. So that money's put forth with that. And with that, we're putting a urban development specialist into the budget. And all this works really under the Economic Development Department. This urban development specialist will be part of that team so they can all work collaboratively together to make a difference in urban development. One of the Commission's big initiatives is how can we do more to let our public know what's going on within the government, and that's open data. Also, what additional innovative projects can we come forward with that'll really make a difference, so we can take advantage of changing times, we can take advantage of good ideas that are in the department. And to present this information, I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant County Administrator, Joe Connor, who's going to give you more details about this. And he's also going to introduce an exciting new platform that we are rolling out today. Joe?
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just want to walk you through a little bit about our open data innovation activities. I think some of this stuff you may have heard before, but I just want to tell you how we started and how we got to where we're at today. First thing is we structured our technology services, and we've kind of realigned things, and we've used that opportunity to create a Chief Knowledge Officer position. This position will kind of lead the effort on open data innovation as well as our current technology services. And that search is still underway. We expect to have someone hired before the end of this year. We also have built into this budget costs for open data and innovation activities, whether that be people or additional programs or something along those lines. But we want the Chief Knowledge Officer to come in and do an assessment of what we need and how we're going to meet the Commission's goals and have the ability to do that. As Doug mentioned, OpenGov is our new initial format for open data platform, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. But included in the budget or currently underway are just some things I wanted to kind of run through with you. The first is our website content management system. We get pretty poor marks for our website, not being very user-friendly. We don't get a lot of usage out of it. We'd like to make that better. And we think that this new content management system will allow us to do that. There is a new initiative from the Commission's perspective. You know, there's a lot of things that happen off budget. There's a lot of things that are, whether it be a project or an innovation or something that needs to happen, that the Commission would like to see. So we want to set up this initiative contingency fund that would be driven by the Commission. Again, it would be on a program basis or a project basis, and could be used for either innovation or a project or something that's off budget that we want to try to have planning money for, that we want to try to investigate a little further and figure out if it's actually something that we want to, that the Commission wants to get into. The agenda and minutes management system. So the one you're currently used to that has the RFAs that get submitted by departments that you're using now will go away here sometime this year. I don't have a rollout date for you yet. But this new system will be much more robust, much easier for you to use, and much easier for the public to access, which is the goal. Our GIS system has been recently upgraded. I believe that ended in June, and we've got phase 1 of our new GIS systems in place. There'll be other phases to it. Other layers will be added to the maps, but that's been recently rolled out. Our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch system, is currently underway to be upgraded. We should roll that out at the beginning of 2016. This will be a massive overhaul of one of our most important backbone systems for public safety, and we expect that, again, to have a lot more customer-friendly aspects to it and a lot more usable for public safety first and foremost, but for the public as well. In the motor vehicle department, this has been a department that a year ago I think was under a lot of scrutiny. There was a lot of frustration with our motor vehicles. There was a lot of frustration with the lines, how long it took, inaccuracies, and so on and so forth. So the staff in motor vehicle have really responded to that challenge, not only with staffing, but also with technology. And so they implemented the queue system. And that's recently been upgraded to include, not only can you come in and make an appointment if there's a long line, you can actually get online ahead of time and decide which office you want to go to, how long the line is to wait for it, and you can choose which office you want to go to and make your appointment. So it should enhance the customer experience, and we're actually seeing, you know, more consistent wait times and more consistent customer experience. In our Register of Deeds office, they're doing a historical records conversion. This is going to take records back to 1975 and put them all online. And again, this will enhance the efficiency of that office. It should provide a better customer experience of people that want to look at records. They won't have to be pulled manually unless it's before 1975, which is quite a ways back. But she's going back to 1975 now for that, and so that's going to be a nice addition for that office. We've mentioned the Parks and Recreation online reservation system and payment. Our purchasing department has upgraded their e-procurement site. So that allows for easier access by people that want to do business with the unified government. They can get in and respond to bids, and we can put things out more electronically. And again, the customer being a lot of times the staff here, trying to get things purchased, we should be able to have a better experience. In our municipal court, you can pay your tickets online now. And again, if you've been on two, especially on some of the heavy days, there's long lines out in that hallway. The goal is to reduce those lines, give people an opportunity to pay their tickets online, and not have to come into this building to do so. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about OpenGov in particular. Again, this is our initial open data platform that we're going to start. This is financial data only, and what OpenGov says is they will transform the way financial information is analyzed, shared, and compared. And we believe that to be true. We've already loaded 10 years worth of financial data into this platform, including the 2015 amended and 2016 proposed budgets. Those are all loaded out there on the site. It does make our financial information much more accessible and much more transparent. And we knew it was going to improve staff efficiency, but you can talk to the budget staff that have been working on this for a few weeks. They found that it's a benefit for themselves in doing their job going into the future once they've got this system up and running. So they've already seen the benefit of that. I think it's going to be helpful for them, and we think it's going to be helpful throughout the organization as well. One of the things that we want to work with the commissioner and the mayors on is providing you with shortcuts to this link, so whether it be on your phone, your tablet, or your desktop. So if you'll let us know, we'll work through Janet in the commission office. We'll get you scheduled and get that put on for you, whatever device or all of them if you'd like to use it, so you can have easier access to that particular system. So what's it have the ability to do? Well, you can track revenues, expenses, and multi-year trends. Obviously, we've got 10 years worth of data there. You can create your own reports or utilize our saved views. And saved views are going to be like frequently asked questions. So as the budget office or as others get questions for requests for information on a certain topic and we get the same thing over and over and over, we're just going to put it out there as a saved view. And that way we can point to it, click on it, and send it to them. I will say that the saved views, as we update information every time we make payments, whether they be expense or payroll, they're updated automatically. We don't have to go back and change our frequently asked questions. That information gets updated. And you can download this data or share it directly from your email or use social media, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a minute. So anybody that goes in and uses this system has the ability to create what they want, save it, download it, or send it. The website address is there, and again, for the mayor and commissioners, we will be providing that for you, whichever way you'd like to have it, or multiple ways. And for right now, the budget office is going to be our lead department on that, and that's the number to contact the main budget office. But Michael and Judd are the two main people in the budget office that are over this particular system. So I want to walk through a couple of examples. So one of the questions that we've been analyzing a lot here in the last year and a half or so is how much does public safety spend on overtime? In the past, if you were to look that up, you'd had to go to the budget page, and this is just a sample of the police department's budget page. We've highlighted the personnel cost. You'd have to call the budget office or call the administrator's office or call the clerk, make a request for additional information on how much is overtime in this particular budget, give it to me for all three departments, and then we would perform this analysis and make it happen. So I'm going to have Michael log on to OpenGov. This site is live right now, by the way. That's not a good sign. There we go. So you'll get a welcome page. You can either do a how-to if you want a little tutorial about it. You can do a budget 101, or you can just get started. You can just jump right into it. So this is 10 years worth of unified government financial information. So the question was, how much does public safety spend on overtime? So what Michael's going to do is search our expense categories for overtime pay throughout the unified government. He's going to filter that down even further by looking at public safety. And there's your 10-year, what we spend on public safety and what we're budgeting for into the future. You can hover over those particular ones and show what department, how much money, what the number is. Or if you're interested in, if you prefer a spreadsheet or a table format, you just scroll down and it gives you the same information, but just in a table format. So that's one example of looking at a group of departments in an expense category over time. You might want to pull up the current year too to look at the May. So we have information loaded through May of this year. So when you pull up the current view, it'll show you May where they were at in that kind of spending in May of those particular years and back in history. And there you have it, right, Michael? So again, that's a little different view. It kind of shows you where, as sometimes some of these budgets are time sensitive to time of year. This will give you an example of what that looked like in May of the previous years back. Another example is going to be from a department level, and Doug has mentioned animal control, so we wanted to kind of highlight that. And again, if you had to do it the way we're doing it now, you had to pull the budget page, and this is a picture of that. We've highlighted animal control and the numbers for the 13, 14, and 15 budgets, and that's what you would have to do to analyze that. But under OpenGov, you basically, you're going to use a budget milestone view. Search by departments. And again, with the search feature, you just type in the name and it'll come up. And then it's going to add the expense report to it. So there's where we're at with animal control over the last few years. One of the things you can also do is if you don't want to look at all those years, you can shrink that down by just moving that over, and that gives you the last couple of years worth. So you can look at it a lot of different ways, forward or backwards. If you want to hover over the download and show them, that's as easy. That's what you need to do to download it. Or if you want to share it, Facebook, Google, Twitter, or you can email it right from that particular spot. So when you create a chart or a graph, you can email it right then and there.
Show a different chart form, a graph form, like a line chart. There you go.
That's what it looks like in bar chart or line chart form, excuse me. So our last example I wanted to bring up was it just from an expense only. If you're interested in this, in our example, we're going to talk about fuel. How much gas do we buy in the unified government? So looking at our Public Works Department, if you go back to OpenGov, you can just search it by fuel and figure out what we're buying and how much of it and how much did we spend. Michael has that as a saved view, so you click on saved view. If you click on Public Works, he's going to filter it one more time. There's gasoline, diesel fuel, and propane. Those are the three types of fuel that we buy in the unified government and in the Public Works Department, and it goes back, like I said, quite a few years. So you can kind of see, where we're at. If you wanted to do it by all departments that purchase fuel, that's all departments. And again, if you hover over one of the categories, it'll tell you how much is in each one. So that's kind of it for our interactive presentation. I certainly would encourage you to use it. We're going to be encouraging the staff to use it. We think it's a great management tool for us and a great way to analyze things on the fly as opposed to having to do the manual calculations and all the work that goes into that. I will say that every time that there's an expense check cut, this system will be updated. So just about every Friday, you're going to get an update to OpenGov from our office. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Michael? I think what turned out to be a project that we were getting into to say, okay, how can we make our financial data more available to the public? When we started investigating the different systems that are out there, we found this system to be one that not only, I think, makes the information very accessible for the public and our constituency to see and for you to see, but also becomes a great management tool that is far more interactive than flipping through what we call as our B103, which is a very static report now. When we want to look at year-over-year data and look at information and break down line items, I think for many managers now they have to go back, get their financial analysts, they start working through this, and it takes them many hours to put information together. What now I think they'll be able to put together in minutes. And I think there's still a lot of things we'll be discovering. Just like Joe said, I think the budget staff found it to be a useful tool for them, and they've got everything broke down in about every way they can, but they could find it to be much more efficient. So with this in mind, our community outlook is positive. Up here, we show that our population growth is up 4,000 since 2010 census. It's the first time we've been able to say that in 4 decades. New single-family building permits remained stable in 2015 after a sharp uptick in 2014. New county development projects are over $630 million, and I think we're trending to exceed $800 million this year, if not to go more. And Wyandotte County remains strong in job growth, ranking 28th nationally out of 339 of our largest counties. So we continue to create jobs for our citizens and others to come into. That concludes my budget presentation, but not without pointing out how much time again that we've spent on this. This commission started in November 1 to strategic planning. We did our financial strategy in January and our first public hearing on February 19th, where people came forward, presented many different ideas, concepts, areas that they thought we should put our emphasis in for budgets, and then a few requests for money. Our community development block grant group met in several subcommittee meetings, and again we went into more strategic planning and did our capital maintenance and equipment projects. Our July budget calendar is laid out, so we started our first workshop on July 16th. We'll do a budget overview and go into the budget book in a little bit more detail at that time. We'll also look to set our maximum mill levy, which is our maximum tax rate, and then spend some time with our community development block grant proposal, as we've already done several times, but we'll get back into that in more detail. And then we'll lay out agendas for future sessions as we move forward. I've also noted the mayor's listening tour as we think about how we plan out in advance. He's looking at this for 2017. Hearing different ideas and thoughts that the public has moving forward as we start to do our strategic planning as we come in later in the year. With that, I'd like to recognize Lou Levin, our Chief Financial Officer, to come forward and present our Distinguished Budget Award, which we received from the Government Finance Officers Association. Mr. Levin has been with us a number of years as our Chief Financial Officer and is a long-term employee before that. So with that, Lou, I'll turn this over to you. And I'd also ask the Mayor if you would come down and help with this presentation. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Just a few brief comments. This award we received earlier this year, but the process was we submit our budget document on an annual basis to the Government Finance Officers Association. We did it most recently, it was late October, early November of last year, and we received notification, I think it was sometime during the first quarter of this year, that the national organization had reviewed the document and had given us this award. The GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association, they look at the document and evaluate to see if the budget document meets certain criteria, and they focus specifically on 4 different guidelines and they basically say, does the budget document serve as a tool for these purposes? And those purposes include, does it provide policy for the government? Does it provide a financial plan for the government, including the future that might include both a capital improvement plan as well as a financial forecast for the future? Does it provide an operation guide for the government, meaning does it provide a structure for the current year budget that departments can adhere to as it relates to their revenues and expenditures? And finally, does it provide, or does it serve as a communication device for both internal users as well as the external users, including the public? And so basically, to receive the award, the document must meet each of those specific areas. one of the things we worked with the governing body in particular in 2014 was to establish clear financial policies and directives for the government, and those are included both in the budget document that you'll receive this evening, as well as the one that we submitted. And so that was an important requirement that had to be included in the budget document. I guess one final thing I'll mention is probably our budget staff is unique throughout the state of Kansas. We prepare both a city budget as well as a county budget, and so when Reginald discussed and mentioned the number of funds that are included in our budget as well as the number of programs, we really, I'll say, distinguish ourselves from other governments in Kansas just because of the volume of or the depth of our budget. And then in addition, this year, the budget staff worked closely with technology in implementing the OpenGov initiative that Joe went over this evening. With that said, I'll ask budget staff to come forward. Michael Peterson, Taja Woolridge, Judy Herr, and Judge Knapp, and Debbie Johncher of Finance, if you could join us also. And Reginald, sorry, Reginald. I'm looking this way.
All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations to our department. Congratulations. Thank you for your work.
Let's get a picture with the whole group. Debbie, come on up. We're going to get a photo op. Come on in. Come on over this way. Right here. Right. And right. All right, here we go. Come on in. Come on in. Scoot in. We can make 2 rows. All right, here we go. One more. Thank you.
Mayor, Commission, with that, that's a proposed 2016 budget. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working through the month with you to bring this to resolution at the end of the month.
Thank you very much. I do see Commissioner Kane. Yes, I do want to recognize, too, after a couple weeks of absence, we're glad to welcome fellow elected official Mary Ann Flunder from the Community College back to her front row seat. So welcome back.
Reginald, I would have never forgot you. I don't know. I can't believe Lou forgot you. And Doug, this looks really good. You know, that this is probably the most colorful one. It's not near as thick as the one in the past. And I appreciate what you're doing. Maybe that's going to make the budget that much shorter. And Joseph Connor. 1975 was not that long ago. That's a great year, Joe. I graduated from high school. You graduated 6 years later. Maybe you're older than I am. But I didn't realize that in 1975 you'd be an antique.
Yeah. Only in regards to the registration of our city. So I do want to encourage the commissioners, as we have done in the past, I want to encourage you to spend some time in the next couple days reviewing the budget document, especially the executive summary that gives you the overview. This presentation is available in it as well. And start documenting your list of questions or projects that you want to discuss during the budgeting process. What I do is if you will get those to me in my office, Jason has been our lead in terms of the budget. If you would get Jason whatever topics you want discussed, I'll work with our administrator to work out a calendar that gives ample time, ample notice for the groups that you want to talk with, and ample time as we shuffle. Because if we have several short ones, we would group those together. If we have some that we anticipate would be longer based on past experience, we would group those differently. But I will assure you, every year we get every topic in. But just make sure you get that to me, and we'll be sure to work through it. So we're underway, and I will say, I cannot emphasize enough, Mr. Bach already said it, working for an entire year on our budget instead of the last 3 weeks makes a world of difference. And so it's a paradigm shift for us a couple years ago, and it's been well received, and that work is going to continue. So we do have 3 intense weeks when we try to finalize everything, but the work we have already done in our strategic planning time and in our public hearing time will bear fruit for us as we move forward in July. So thank you all very much, and with that, our meeting is adjourned.